So if I said Boston in the house, what would you say?
Let's say Boston in the house. Let's definitely say Dorchester in the house. That's my hood. So
So now, what's your since this is we people calling into the show. I call this your nom de voce. What's your nom de voce? What do you identify as when you call into Yvette's show? You know
I
you
mean,
call in all the time.
I guess commonly is Reggie from Boston. So that's what um, people seem to recognize me as.
How did you? I guess the standard question we just have to ask is, what was your road to this to ADOS?
Well, I mean, my my road to ADOS, I mean, it started just with my life in general. Um, my my mother always made sure I was aware of our family's history, um, and the history of our people generally. On my mother's side, my great grandmother um, had red hair.
Hmm.
Her red hair came from her grandfather, who was an Irish slave owner. Taking visits down to Dallas where she lived, you're constantly reminded of that history. So you're in America and you are a descendant of slavery. So before that designation even came, you have that awareness. And on my father's side, my his father, my grandfather, before he passed, before internet and the ancestry.com and the DNA, he did the painstaking work of tracing our family back to slavery. And ironically, on my father's side, the slave owner was also Irish, who won our female ancestor in a game of cards.
Oh boy.
Now it's interesting because we now understand that the value of a slave who had worked for a certain amount of years was literally worth more than a house. So you kind of have to, when you put that in context, you understand the wealth position of the men at that card table and the depravity to use a human being literally as a poker chip. It's very sobering, and even more so now that we understand the data in terms of how much how our actual bodies were worth, that uh, gave the whites the wealth that they have today.
Now you mentioned you're from Dorchester. Now you're born when you went down to Texas. I mean, it's because you had relatives down there, but you always was in the Boston area. Let's put it that way.
I was born in Lansing, Michigan,
Okay.
and moved around a lot. When my parents split, on my mother's side of things weren't always stable. ADOS life. We moved a lot to try to find her way. My father also moved a lot to try to find his way. So I was moving around, a lot. Michigan, California, Oklahoma,
Really?
the South, Alabama, Mississippi, ultimately Boston.
Okay. Well, what age did you hit Boston? Which is also, I guess, that's actually maybe more. I don't want to say more racist, but whatever, more something than even Texas. Some people will tell you.
So you're saying when did I get to
You-
Boston?
you just-
I got to Boston like early 2000s.
Oh, okay. So you're okay, fine. But you identify there because that's where you are now.
Yeah, I mean, and that's where I've spent the most time living in one place.
Oh, now I understand. Okay,
So
okay.
Boston's that's home.
So when you got there, you seemed like you're, I don't want to say politically connected, but it seemed like you got when did you get more political in the for the Boston area? Let's put
Well,
that.
I mean, in terms of the Boston area, I work in real estate there, and in my workings in real estate, I ran into people who were advocating for tenants' rights, fighting displacement and gentrification, and through that work, I met people who were advocating for not only equity in housing, but were also very reparations minded. So I found some partnership there, testifying at the state house to fight anti-displacement. Speaking at a rally here and there, helping with organizing meetings, and so just kind of going out there, just trying to help out and just finding the work.
I guess I'm doing this in a roundabout way. I'm trying to figure out, because a lot of people are not, well, most ADOS are not political. When I say that, I don't mean, you understand what I'm saying like that. So what is it in your lineage that makes you activists?
Honestly, I don't know. I guess maybe again understanding that history, it just kind of fuels you to want to do something. I mean, I kind of like in terms of the gentrification and anti-displacement work. I got to talking to them. They just kind of pulled me off the street, like, I feel.
So it wasn't a family. In other words, there's no uncle or aunt or whatever that was imbued you with some sort of political sense or whatever.
Oh, well, I mean, again, on my mother's side and my father's side, understanding that lineage, kind of fuels that political consciousness, and also growing up, when I'd go back to Dallas and Houston, or back to Michigan to talk to family, the aunts and uncles, they'd always, after the family reunion, when the food is digesting, we're sitting, in the living room, the conversation always goes to politics. So it's literally like a panel or a political convention in the living room. So like the aunts and the uncles and my mother and the grandparents, everybody's going back and forth. So through the Bushes and the Clintons, as a child, I'm kind of sitting at their feet, just kind of watching them. So that really kind of fueled me to really think politically, because that's how my family was moving at that point.
What's happening now with your family when they know? I guess they know by now that you're very active in this particular. I'm sorry. Let me continue that. What do they think of now? What do you still have these political conversations?
Well, when my grandfather passed, some months back, we went up to Michigan again to bury him, and we connected with family, and I knew I was onto something when I was the one who was actually, as an adult now, to participate in those roundtable discussions.
Okay.
And I actually made the argument.
Really?
I was like, before, as a little child, I tried to chime in, and mom was like, grown folks are talking. Now I'm the grown folk talking, and now everybody's listening to me. So that's some cool shit there.
Oh, this is very interesting. I guess not twisting that, but to turn that a certain way. I insist that. Let me put it this way. People always talk. I've always been around people that talk politics, but they would say things like, "Yeah, but if I was back there in slavery, I would do this or that. If I was there, lynching, I would do this or that. If I was the civil rights, they wouldn't be sick no dog on me." But the inherent thing is that there's always been a condition or a thing like that, a movement that people would, whatever they would say. What do you think of? Is this a seminal movement in the history of liberation of downtrodden? I say downtrodden.
I'd say without a doubt, absolutely without a doubt.
As important as, or as or more important than what?
I would just say it's a continuation or a reawakening of that same struggle. I mean, I've never seen anything like this in my lifetime, as far as a coalescing of black people around an agenda and pursuing it collectively and aggressively. And I mean, it's refreshing for me because I've never seen. It's like I've been conscious and aware, but I've never seen this type of collective, political, unapologetic black aggression. So for me, I'm at home. So
I was also wondering, and I'm not going to keep you too long. I was also wondering. Now, let's say you're in the eye of the storm. Let's say your perspective might be a little bit different because you're surrounded by you're wrapping yourself in other people of the ilk. There's a lot of people out there. I don't want to say naysayers that are just not with this yet or whatever it is. What do you feel about? I mean, how do you see that? Do you see there's a lot of too much work do we have to do, or how to changing these minds? What's your take on this?
well, I mean, it's a lot of work to do. It's Yvette, says often it's a marathon, not a sprint. So I keep that in mind when I'm engaging folks. Some folks take a while, and then some folks reject it outright. Some hop on board right away, but you just got to keep continuing the work, building the base, because the key to any political successes rest with being organized, and that's what we're doing here.
Okay, you did that phrase, building the base. But guess that's what I'm saying. That's like, say, making the bandwagon. I guess that's what I'm asking. How effective do you think people will quickly move on to the jump on the bandwagon, or it's going to take the dentist, pulling?
Well, I think it's a combination of both. I think we're going to start seeing people jump on immediately. I'm already seeing an uptick of people online wanting to join in and join the organizational piece, not just on the sidelines. Like, they're wanting to actually come and organize. There's already been an immediate uptick before we even wrapped up earlier this morning, and I think you're going to continue to see people trickle in.
So we're saying that this inaugural event, caused this. What do you think else is needed? What kind of events? Let's brainstorm a bit. Let's say let's take it for granted that next year, October, there'll be an event. There'll be a second annual whatever the deal is. Between now and then, what kind of events do you envision should cause upticks, as you would say?
Well, it would be in our different localities. Or organizing where you are within your community, engaging your politicians, finding like minds. So it would be that building of the base within your own community, and then by next year, when we all come together nationally, it'll be even bigger. But it starts at home. You have to organize your family, get your family in line, get your community in line. Find those like minds, join those organizations, and engage those organizations. By way of Project Takeover, that Yvette laid out, to where we engage the Urban League, we engage the NAACP, and if they don't get in line, which some of them may not, we join and we take over. That same aggressive, unapologetic love for Black people and love for justice, like with that aggressive, unapologetic love for Black people, we take over those organizations and push for reparations in the Black agenda.
Okay, last thing. We talked for a little bit here. Make like this wasn't you and I talking. This was, say, Yvette and a caller talking. Now now she's punching it down. Now Reggie from Boston's up. What would you say to this conversation?
What would I say to what?
To this conversation or this in this exchange? What would you say about this exchange? What would your comment be?
I would just say we're just getting started. And again, I go back to the love. Like, my biggest takeaway from all of this is just such a genuine, massive outpouring of love for Black people. Like, the politics aside, again, this is this type of outpouring of love among Black people. This is something that I have never seen before.
Thank you.
Thank you.